Okay, welcome back. Well, I normally don't use slides in my Sunday talks, but today I'll make an exception. When we decided on this topic, it was a few months ago, and Sister Bita approached me to do this Sunday talk. She asked me, what topic? And I say, just off my head, I say, okay, maybe I'll talk about changes. So it was fixed maybe 1 or 2 months ago. And today I can't think of a better time to talk about change. And I'd like to also use this as an opportunity for us to remind ourselves that today is indeed the last day of National Mourning. And for the last few days, we have all been remembering Mr. Lee Kuan Yew the best we can. Today will be no exception, and I hope if you can allow me to do so, to continue the tribute that we owe to this great man. And the reason I use slides is that there's so many images, some that I've never shared in public before, and I will show it to you. You're the first audience that I show some very private pictures, but it will come later. But as it is said, the picture says 1,000 things, and for this reason, I thought some images would be able to convey the message much better than just my spoken words. So what I'd like to do is to talk about change in the context of what we see around us. For those of us who have lived in Singapore, like me, long enough, one of the things that we see a lot in this life of ours is obviously change. This first set of picture is very familiar to those of us born before pre-independence and in the early years of independence. See a lot of young people in the audience. Do you recognize this picture? Have you seen Singapore River like this before? So for the older ones, this is quite a familiar scene, all right? The picture does not carry the aroma, the smell, the food, or the dirt that you see, but you get the idea. And it's no fun actually walking along the Singapore River in those days. And in those days too, water supply is not as convenient as today, you know. At home, in your kitchen, you turn on the tap and the water runs. You take your shower, the water comes out, and then you just go into a hole and then it gets let away. In those days, very common. I grew up in this kind of kampongs, if you like. And every day we have to go and pick up a water, enough for the needs of the day. And sometimes my mother will wash the clothes and all that out there. And sometimes we'll take our bath there also. You know, there's a skill, a way to do it without, in a very modest way, so that you don't show too much. But we live those days in this rather harsh condition. And sometimes the taps don't run because there's water rationing. And that's what you see down there. The government have to tell people that the tap will only run certain time and then other times no water, so you have to fill up your pier. Very common scene. Floods. Okay, so today we do get floods still. I'm not saying that there are no floods. But in those days, the floods were much more disruptive. The depth of the water, you can see even the army have to be called in to rescue people. The extent of the flooding was a lot more. Whole kampongs, whole village will be affected. The picture in the middle, right at the bottom picture, you can see it's actually Braddell Road. And you know the part of Braddell Road that goes over the Kallang River. So water everywhere except this hum where the bridge, Braddell Road bridge crosses the river. Okay, all around is actually the river. They're swollen. You can't even see the river now because the water just spread beyond the river. And all the cars were all just taking shelter in this higher part of Braddell Road. And that was one occasion, 1978, when it rained for 2 days very high tide at the same time. So it was still on record one of the worst flood that we have experienced. Many people, in fact 7 casualties, people actually died in floods during those days. Not to say that there were a lot of livestock affected also, ducks, chickens, pigs. The day after the flood, in fact, I was working then as a very junior engineer. We spent almost a few days just to scoop up all the carcasses, the pigs and ducks and all that's floating down, stuck at the bridge, and we have to pick it up, clear it. And street hawkers, just like my mother washing the clothes at the standpipe. After washing, the water will just go to the drain. And where does the drain go to? Go to a canal, a longkang, and then finally to a river. And the street hawkers, as you can see, is again a very common sight. And you can see one of the lady there washing the dishes. And after washing the dishes, what happened? The water just go down into the drain. And the drain will then bring the dirty water to the river. And that's how over time all the rivers became so dirty and so polluted. And the gentleman carrying the bucket, how many of you know what is inside the bucket? That shows our age, right? The young people may not know. But that's our, what they call night soil, a very nice term for what you deposit every morning, when you go to the toilet. The toilet in those days is not like the modern toilet today. You just pull a lever and then the water or just everything all go down. But in those days, you go into a bucket like this. There's a hole in your toilet. Pop, 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 everything all drop into the bucket. And then the next day, this kind man will just come and pick up from every household and then send it to a government place to dispose of it. And of course, you put in a clean bucket for you to deposit, for him to collect the next day. And so that was the way life was. All right, and I don't know whether you remember one day the union was very strong in those days, right? The union demand a lot of things. And this night soil collector also have union, And one day they decided to go on strike. You all remember, those older people, they remember. Then what do we have to do? A bucket full, nobody to collect it. So the government mobilized the police. If you're in the police force, you have to also do this kind of thing. And we were all told to bring our bucket to the main road, and the policemen will come and pick it up. Luckily, the strike didn't last too long. And that's why sometimes you wonder, why is it Singapore so strict about strikes? So important that we have the union working together. And it's all because of incidents like this. Critical service, once they go on strike, you have all kinds of problems. And the Singapore River, it was like this before. It's real scene that's taken. If you look carefully, you find all kinds of things in the river. Sometimes even dead rats, dead a lot of things in the river. And it wasn't a surprise that the river is so dirty. From the streaks, from as far, if you look at Singapore River, the water comes from as far as, say, Queenstown, Alexandra, a few kilometers away from this very place. But if someone were to throw rubbish, say, in Queenstown, all this rubbish will float all the way down to Kallang River and eventually into this Marina Bay. So that's the impact that a lot of people don't realize. And in those days before the cleanup, the pig farms, the duck farm, the vegetable farms, the hawkers were all in this hinterland or catchment. No wonder the river gets so dirty after some time. And they were within the river itself. You see all these are bumboats, the boats that ply the river up and down. They will collect stuff from the ships because the waters here are quite shallow, the ships can't come in. So these bumboats have to go out, pick up the wares from the ships, and then bring it into the Singapore River, and then the go-downs and the warehouse are all sited along the river. Okay, so all those pubs and nightclubs that you see now in Boat Quay, they used to be warehouses, places where all these go-downs go to. Right, you see the plank next to the boat. And you probably can see some old pictures of all these workers carrying rice sacks, spices and all that, balancing themselves on these planks to go and bring the thing inland. And where's the river valley, the famous nightclub, Zok or something, Zok. It used to be a big go-down and warehouse, That's why I see the structure is built in a way that, and imagine before, in these days, it was just used to store rice and all kinds of things that these bumboats pick up. And the bumboats, of course, people will live there and the workers will stay there and do all kinds of things. And again, they contribute to the pollution. The other one is taken at Kallang Basin, where the mouth of Kallang, Merdeka Bridge and Kallang, that's used to be what it was like before, and Geylang River itself, because those are the places that is zoned as what you call barter trading area. In other words, you have the boats coming from the Indonesian islands, from Bugis and all these places, the Celebes, where they carry spices and things like that, all the way up to here, and they'll dock here, and then they do barter trading. So in exchange for the spices and all that from Indonesia, they'll be picking up stuff from Singapore to bring back. So while they're here, of course, they will do their boat repair and all kinds of things to make sure that the journey back is okay. The Geylang River is designated as a charcoal trading area. So again, they bring charcoal from the Riau Islands, bring up to Geylang River, and again offloaded down there, and very, very messy, because you can imagine the scene. Again, it was a boat repairing area. So after some time, by 1970, when Mr. Lee said, let's clean up the river, the whole place was just unimaginable. Nobody can even think of going along the river and enjoying the river scene. Now, I'd say all these things because I want you, as I tell the story, also to reflect on the changes that are taking place. Now, Singapore today is obviously very different. That picture is of Singapore River today, and those of you who do not know what it was like before couldn't imagine that just maybe 30 years ago, it was a totally different scene. Nobody would want to go there and walk around the river, enjoy a drink or makan along the boat quay, Clarke Quay and all this very hip place. Unimaginable. And when Mr. Lee in 1977 said, let's clean up the river, he ordered the civil servants to do it, and he gave 10 years to do it. A lot of us, I was involved also, and my colleagues were just shaking our head. How? It looks like almost impossible to do. So today, we need not worry too much about water. And again, this will be a good reflection on changes. We started off when we gained independence from the British. We only have 3 reservoirs, the one in the middle, the one in the brown area. All right? Just 3 reservoirs. And imagine if we had not expanded our catchment areas, expanded our collection areas where water from the sky can be collected and become usable as our drinking water, we will be stuck only with 3 reservoirs and very, very dependent on the Malaysian water. But today we have expanded with Marina, Punggol and Serangoon. Altogether now we have 17 reservoirs. 17 reservoirs. And that covers 2/3 of Singapore's land area. In other words, 2/3 of Singapore land, the rain that falls in this 2/3 of Singapore land will eventually find its way into a reservoir to be stored there and become our drinking water. We are probably the only country in the world that has so much of its land area turned into water catchment. And another unique feature is that we are probably the only country in the world that even dare to think of using urban areas as our catchment area. So if you look at the Marina Basin, it's all built-up area, city area, Ang Mo Kio, Queenstown, and so on. Anything that you can think of within the urban area is all down there. And that breaks a tradition, the convention, because water engineers would not want to pick up water from here. And again, that you can reflect, run through some of this reflection later on. You have something that is almost insurmountable, a problem that was facing Singapore at independence. Where are we going to get our water supply? We were then just dependent on our own local source, which is just 3 reservoirs, and mostly from Malaysia. And today, okay, this is, in case you don't know, and in case you have not visited Marina Barrage at night, it's very, very beautiful too at night. All right, this is what it's like. Oh, sorry. Oh, I think I missed one slide before this. There's a slide that actually meant to show that what it is today now is that we have water supply not just from rainwater, that means our own water catchment, and the Malaysian water. We have 2 other new sources that came into our water stock in the last 2 decades. One is new water, the other one is desalination. And actually what it means to us is that we can confidently say, I'm saying this not just because I was PUB, but we can confidently say that we can be self-sufficient. We don't have to worry. Even if the Malaysians were to cut off the water supply, we shouldn't worry too much. All right? You see, the 2 sources of water that we had for many, many years, even if the Malaysian waters are flowing, it is still very dependent on the rain. And you saw what it was like the last few months of drought. In Malaysia itself, the reservoirs were all dropping. In Singapore in the past, it used to be like that. Whenever the rains don't come, the water would drop. But now we have new water and desalination, and it means that you have sources of water that's less dependent on the rainwater. All right? New water, as you know, is recycled water. Very clean, don't worry. Can drink. I've been drinking it for many years already, still alive. Very clean water and desalination, water you pick up from the sea. So these 2 new sources actually have given Singapore a robustness in our water supply. No more dependent on Mother Nature. So that's why we can confidently say, don't worry, water supply is not a problem. But 50 years ago, can we say that? In fact, we thought that the survival of Singapore is going to be very, very fragile because of this water issue. And what it really shows us here about change is this, and this is where we really have to credit Mr. Lee for having that vision, that confidence that we can overcome the water situation. That despite the odds that stack against us, if we're able to use technology, able to use the right kind of people for the right kind of job, for this kind of job, we can overcome the difficulties no matter how hard it is. And in fact, if you reflect on this again, what used to be our vulnerability have now been turned into our strength. Because of all these things that we did with experimenting with water, the research and all the breakthroughs that we have, a lot of people now look at us and say, can you please teach us? How do you clean up rivers? How do you turn urban areas into water catchment? How do you recycle water? Our weakness have become our strength. I think it's a good reflection for every one of us. Never get stuck in a difficulty and say, die already. Cannot do anything about it. It's all a matter of conditions, changing the conditions around you. And that's what the Dharma teaches us too. We must not think that we are destined to be stuck in a situation in our life forever. It's in our hands. And you can see through the water story how Mr. Lee has mobilized the country, mobilized the right kind of people to think through the problem and think of ways to overcome the problem. And it's really taking ownership of the problem ourselves and finding a way out of it. Okay, the next few segments, I just want to make sure that I don't go beyond 12 o'clock, so please pardon me for running a bit fast with some of the slides. The next segment of slides are what I told you earlier, are all my private collection, which I'm sharing for the first time today. Now this is picture that we took. There was a team. I was under, or rather, I was heading the corporate communication as part of my work. And one of my work was sometimes to arrange for interviews with Mr. Lee. We bring reporters, and in this case, CNA was doing a documentary. So the people down there, one lady, the one in black, was my comms chief, and the rest are all the CNA production crew. So we arranged for the interview, and then we try our luck. After the interview, we asked Mr. Lee, can we have a group photograph? And of course, we expected to be turned down, but he was so gracious. So he sat down there, and we had this group photo. I just want to bring this up just to bring the human side of Mr. Lee. A lot of people think, wow, he must be. If you listen to all his pictures and all that, and so powerful, you must say that a lot of people will be so terrified of him. But actually, when you come and talk to him, and Brother Vincent have been close encounter with him too, he is just human, very, very warm and very human. And this is one of the example of it. Now, I also have the good fortune of accompanying him on some of his very unscheduled, unannounced visits to PUB places. This one is taken at MacRitchie Reservoir. And usually they don't tell you that he's coming until about half an hour before the visit. The security officer will call our office and say, oh, Mr. Lee would like to visit MacRitchie Reservoir. And then they'll look for someone to just be able to go there and host him and answer all his questions. And because I was I don't know what I was, but somehow I was landed up with a job. So when the call came half an hour, then rushed down to make sure that I'm ahead of his entourage. And in this very particular scene, it was raining, and we thought that he might cancel the visit. But no, visit on. So umbrellas up and everybody all ready for him to come. And he came, and I think by then he was probably in his 80s, still continue with the walk, holding umbrella all by himself. Nobody hold for him. He was holding by himself. And was I afraid? Of course, you know what kind of questions you ask and all kinds of things that go into your mind. But Mr. Lee actually put you at ease. And I can tell you this for a fact because I felt that for all his reputation, I think when it comes to human contact, and knowing that at this time when he probably just want to have someone bring him around, show him, maybe answer some of his questions, he was very, very kind. And I knew that he probably understand that a Sunday afternoon for a working person is not really a good thing for that person, but he knew that I was maybe taking the trouble just to meet him. And for that reason, I thought that he was a little bit more warmer and kinder. The questions came, of course, all kinds of questions, but he can be very forgiving when I tell him I don't know the answer. So he's not as terrifying as many people think he is. In fact, I almost felt like I'm walking with my father when I walk with him. So this is at another part of the MacRitchie. By then he was holding the umbrella for me, as you can see. So paiseh, I didn't realize that until I saw this picture. Yeah, no airs about him, you know. So you don't walk. I mean, when you come to this spot, if you know MacRitchie, you have to walk up a ramp and come up to this top of the. In fact, this is where the dam that hold the water in the MacRitchie. And he will be asking all kinds of questions, nothing related to my area of specialty. Very general questions about the people who come and the trees and obviously the water and so on. In our walk, we usually will meet some of the local people, and you'll be very curious, you'll be very happy to see all these local people enjoying themselves. There were one or two foreigners. I remember a French guy with a family. So he stopped to talk to this person and asked him, where are you from? Then he mentioned, and he was so happy just having the brief moment to talk with Mr. Lee. This one is at Marina Barrage, where he make a lot of visits. After we completed the barrage in 2008, he was almost making weekly visit every Sunday. And of course, I ended up with a task to bring him around. But on looking back, it was really a pleasure, a blessing for me, because I learned a lot from him. And after a while, I think I became more easy with him and got time to even smile and laugh. And this is really one of my favorite photos. You see him smiling so broadly. He was looking at some local families enjoying themselves, kids running around. And every time you see this, he's so delighted to see people enjoying themselves. You go to the rooftop, you see people flying kites. That gives him a lot of joy. So when we go on this round, it's just like, he's just enjoying a nice Sunday stroll or Sunday walk. And of course, all those people down there, to them it's like a bonus lah. They go to Marina Barrage not expecting to see the great man, and suddenly he showed up. And sometimes he will ask me to stop and he will talk to people. There was one occasion when he spoke to an Indian family, and he was very curious whether he's a local Indian or an Indian visitor. So he stopped and asked this person. And then they have a small exchange. And once in a while, as I drive, he will ask me, do you think this family is local or not? Then I would try to answer lah. I say, maybe he's local, looking at mannerism and blah, blah, blah. Then he asked me to stop, and then you talk to this person. So he has got this feeling for people. He really cares for people. And this again is my very favorite photo. See him smiling so broadly, really enjoying himself, soaking in the atmosphere. And there was one time when we drove past and there was a huge crowd, knowing already words have gone round that he's there. So there's one part where, as you from the bridge, you go into the barrage. On the second floor, people can actually overlook the bridge. So people were all lining up down there to wait for him. And as we drove, everybody was applauding and waving and all that. So he was very pleased, of course. He waved back. And then I told him, it must be very nice to see so many people acknowledging you. He said, yeah, but you have to work at it. You have to work to win the confidence of the people. Now this scene, I thought was a very beautiful scene of him. It was taken by a friend, one of the official photographers at this official event. Then after the photograph, after the session, he told me, say, yep, I have M.M. Lee in Anjali pose. So then he showed me this photo. So this is my last slide. I want to end with perhaps 3 reflections. Number 1 is that you can see that the Singapore story, whether it's a water story or urban housing and so on, it's all about being able to face up to difficulties. Changes we have to make, and we know in the Dharma that changes is part of the nature of life. But sometimes, because the going gets tough, there's a probability that we might give up. But Mr. Lee has shown us, whether through the water narrative or other aspect of Singapore life, that no matter how tough, if we can apply our mind and heart to it, we can overcome. And the other lesson is also that we have to really take things in our own hands. You can't blame anybody for your difficulties. We have to understand all these are just conditions coming together. We can change the conditions, change the situation, but we must never give up. Now the second reflection is that when you read the stories of Mr. Lee these last few days, he personifies values that keep family strong. His love for his wife, his children is legendary. Every time I read this, I just tell myself, I want to be like him, a better father, a better husband. I think he showed the way. And he also embodies the values that make a society strong and united. the qualities of discipline, the qualities of integrity, the qualities of honor, that whatever that's entrusted to you, and he said so famously that he will even give his life to honor that responsibility and that duty. So again, it's something that we must never forget. Singapore is strong today because of him, because we have good men and women who understand these values very, very, very well and uphold these values. Now the third reflection is the reason why we can now sit in comfort, enjoy the fellowship, is the environment that he has created for us to be able to practice whatever faith we are. The religious tolerance, the religious harmony that we enjoy today must not be taken for granted. Those of us who know the days when Singapore River was dirty, we also know for a fact that race relationship, religious harmony was not the order of the day. People were killing each other because you are of a different skin, because you speak differently, and hating each other because of your religious belief. Today is a totally different picture, and we really have to think of Mr. Lee as making it possible. And every one of us who are Buddhists and intend to carry on this tradition in peace and in harmony, we have to uphold that legacy also. And make sure that we don't do silly things that will upset this very fragile harmony that is now created. Be good Buddhists, practice well, do good, avoid evil, purify your mind, and respect other religion. Respect other religion, that's very important. Everybody have the right to believe what they want to believe. Never assert ourselves just because you're Buddhist thinking that we are better than other religion. No. And within our religion, we must also keep the harmony. To me, as I take on the president's post in BF, I want to make sure that the BF stay understood this mission very, very well. Don't do anything that will harm the religious harmony that we enjoy today. Okay, so that in a way this is also to help ourselves, to make sure that we continue to enjoy this environment for us to practice, to learn to practice and to serve. Okay, so these are my 3 reflections. I hope that you can also take some time to think about this. The legacy of Mr. Lee, as you all know, is so well manifested in the physical environment, the trees, the tall buildings, the commerce, economic development, and so on. But you must also remember that the legacy that he left behind is also to allow us to uplift ourselves spiritually. It's not just about the physical and material, but also providing us the environment for us to uplift ourselves spiritually as well. And that I think we must show a lot of gratitude. So to Mr. Lee, thank you very much for giving your life to us. Thank you.
Very insightful sharing for someone in the pioneer generation who was fortunate enough to work for, with our forefather. So you guys are very fortunate too. You have a chance to see the person who is bigger than Singapore, all right? Because when I worked in China, we met the ministers of the trade, and the local government. When I said I'm from Singapore, they asked, what's Singapore? After a while, when we said, when the words Li Guangyao was mentioned, he said, oh, Nanyang the Zhongtong, which means they know Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, but they do not know what is bad in Singapore. So we are grateful for this, all right? Shall we do that?
The dedication of marriage to Mr. Lee as well.
dedicate marriage to for you. So let's all of us calm our mind, be in our Anjali position.